Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Halloween. I am the Tao Tak. Forget it, why am I even trying here? Real talk though, the element and darkness in most forms of media are usually very obscure and difficult to describe what it really is. Either way, here are my 5 favorite shadowcasters, or in layman's terms, Dark Element Wielders. Besides the obvious one per franchise of games that I've played so far, the main element in their arsenal has to be primarily darkness. The characters can have other elements they can use, but the shadow element has to be their main use, and not just one that they can use alongside others. So, I'm going to have to regrettably eliminate Naoto Shirogane as a candidate, since the abilities that said candidate uses are both light and dark, and not just dark as their main element. That is what is called a yin-yang bomb. Also, just because a person is an embodiment of darkness, it doesn't mean that they use shadows as a primary weapon. So no Xemnas from Kingdom Hearts 2. Alright, I think that should work. It's time to cast a shadow. I really love the Persona series. Despite Persona 4 being a cash cow franchise to most people, I still enjoy most of the spin-offs that have been released. Persona 5 is still pretty far, but even so, I still had something to tie me over until then. Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. Being the sequel to Persona 4 Arena, they had to step things up from its predecessor in terms of gameplay and story. I mean, this pretty much had a lot of things pandering to most of those who are familiar with the 3rd and 4th games, including many returning fan favorites. Well, at least most. Oh yeah, but we cannot forget about the only new character in this game.
I am Minazuki. Show Minazuki.
This freaking guy. The series has seen its side of pretentious pricks, but Minazuki really takes the cake for me. The guy has a split personality, one with and without a persona. Without a persona, he's an obnoxious brat armed with worse puns than freaking Teddy, and I usually like bad puns. That aside, when he does get his persona via a plume of dust, he becomes an incredibly devilish character who wants to destroy, then recreate the world for himself. In both forms, he dual wields katanas. Without his persona, he is very physical, relying on long combo strings to get by his matches, with the catch of him obviously not having a persona, and the fact his health is fairly low. However, the actual problem is how to classify him as an Umbrakinetic. When you consider what these dark skills are in these games, the Mudo spells are typically a one-hit kill technique. So by that logic, seeing that he doesn't have any variation of these skills should disqualify him, if not for the fact that he makes it look like a dark element. His attacks usually have a red blade aura surrounding them, but when he gains a persona, he gains black fire to his slashes and gains a draining skill that has a dark aura around it. And since dark versions of element spells count, he qualifies, and obviously enough is number 5 on this list. Going back to the gameplay, Sho's moveset consists of typical Shoto clone properties, including a rising upper, the earlier mentioned projectile flame slash, and hell, even has an attack where he can rush across the screen in order to do damage. That's not to say that being a Shoto clone is bad in this regard. Narukami is this archetype and I don't have any problem playing as him, so why should Sho get treated negatively in this regard? In any case, Minazuki does have long combo strings with usually little damage output within each attack, leaving his health to get progressively lower. Unlike normal Sho though, he gains more SP skills thanks to Tsukiyomi, his persona. Tsukiyomi's added abilities is what truly makes him an Umbrakinetic in my eyes. He can black the screen a little, which can play mind games on the opponent, his drain attacks with his grabs, or perhaps the biggest supporter of his dark arts, his instant kill, God Devil Annihilation.
Destroy everything. It's time to despair. Writhe in pain. A world like this should completely disappear!
What can I say about this? He starts off by channeling his inner Dio Brando before going all out with a wave of shadows that Terumi himself would be proud of, and before you know it, the victim falls like a goddamn sarcophagus and then gets slashed out of existence by Tsukiyomi's scythe sword. Minazuki may not be my favorite thing to come out of Ultimax, trust me, the story kinda screws it over a little for me, but he's definitely one thing that will be certainly remembered through and through this game. And to end this off, his voice actor is Todd Haberkorn. Speaking of BlazBlue...
Is this some kind of joke?
Now, I'm gonna be honest, I have very little knowledge of the BlazBlue series, and I have only played Chrono Phantasma as of this video right now. So let's see if I can explain how awesome Ragna the Blood Edge is without looking like an idiot. I think the simplest aspect to explain how he's an Umbrakinetic is in his gameplay. I mean, really. Powered by a piece of the Azure Grimoire, he can summon darkness to assist him in battle, such as simply enhancing his attacks or summoning parts of the Black Beast through his drive attacks, which by the way can absorb some of the enemy's life force, which is used to replenish his own, not to mention his awesome looking sword, the Blood Scythe. This is practically where his darkness based attacks come in, where they are all named after something from Hell. I mean with names like
Dead Spike!
And
Hell's Fang!
Along with my personal favorite,
Inferno Divider!
It really shows his whole dark isn't evil characterization around him. Although the good isn't nice traits really do stand out. And I really mean stand out. Dude's like one of the most resilient, brashest, and crudest protagonists to date. And his reputation as the Grim Reaper makes him one of my favorite characters in BlazBlue so far. I should probably get to his backstory as well. He is the oldest of his siblings, Jin and Seiya. No, not that Seiya, the one that was stolen from him because of that prick Terumi, where said sister eventually becomes the main antagonist of Chrono Phantasma. And hey, if that's not enough, his arm gets cut off as well! That's where Jubei comes in, stepping in to train him in the way of the Blood Edge, and as a result, becomes the self-proclaimed Grim Reaper. In any case, through Chrono Phantasma, his hostile personality eventually starts dissolving into a protector of the ones that he cares about, and the reliance on his fragment of the Azure also decreases, now focused on using his own strength, becoming a more efficient fighter as a result. Although his fate at the end of Chrono Phantasma is unknown, only time will tell about his fate. And now to end off this duel, let's rock, Ragna!
The power of the Azure!
Ah, Fire Emblem, one of my favorite game series! The Dark Mage and Sorcerer classes are typically seen as the Dark Magic users, but on the side they tend to have other skills as well. Obviously enough, Dark Magic is reserved only for this class, and since their introduction in Fire Emblem Gaiden, they have been somewhat a staple in all of the Fire Emblem games. And by all of the Fire Emblem games, I mean I have only played these three, and only one of them I have actually completed! So yeah, Fire Emblem Awakening! By the gods, Henry is just one crazy character. He is the last parent character that joins the team, and he is already a fully fledged Dark Mage, ready to be promoted when you get him in Chapter 13. Sure, you get Tharja, but I'm sorry, she is such a freaking bitch! Aversa, on the other hand, is a hard character to get, and the characterization for both is only some of my least favorite. Surely they could have done something about it, but they just never stuck with me as characters I like, let alone usable units for completing maps. That said, this is where Henry comes in to save the day. With his stats, he has a fairly high skill stat growth, so things like the skill Vengeance or the Dark Magic Tome Ruin can be heavily abused, and one of the perfect things to pass on to Noir, I mean his next of kin. Sure, his speed isn't the best and his resistance is kinda shoddy, but I would be lying if I didn't enjoy bringing him to the front lines. I mean, I'm fairly sure he enjoys going out there as well. His personality is also a joy for, well, anyone really. He always has a smile on his face where anything he says or does makes it all the more funny due to how nonsensical it always seems. Heck, he's very nonsensical that it would make sense for him to be Noir's father, considering her personality, his lack of concern for his own safety when he tries to help her, and the fact that he can easily befriend a lot of people in the Shepherds is kinda touching. He's also voiced by Bryce Papenbrook. You know, the protagonist of Danganronpa. Just gonna let that sink in for a little bit. Remember me talking about Conception 2 Children of the Seventh Stars? Now's as good a time as any to talk about it. I really like this game. It's a Persona-esque dungeon crawler RPG with typical dating sim elements, where those elements take form as the game's main selling point, making children! And of course, with making children comes building the romance subplots with all your in-game classmates, who all have different elemental abilities, so logically they had to make one for every conceivable element in this game. And that, my friends, is where Fine Glass is introduced. Now, I am a huge fan of many hero animes, well, at least animes with multiple love interests, but there is usually two tropes that I usually fall in love with when I watch this. The first girl wins, or the last girl wins. In any case, Fine Glass is the very last female protagonist in this game, and she shows her spades at being a great character. Fine is introduced after the third main dungeon, Greed is cleared, but she is already very grateful for the protagonist's actions after being the second dungeon, Gluttony, which happened to be near her hometown. As a result, when Fine joins your team, she becomes indebted towards Wake, and the romance starts there. She's technically older than Wake, but it doesn't stop their relationship at all. Hell, just like with all the other female partners in this game, she has at least one charm about her that makes me love her. In the case of Fine, well, at least besides being voiced by Aaron frickin' Fitzgerald, it's her unbroken kinetic powers and her love for photography. I mean, in all the events that she's in, she displays such grace to everyone, but on the inside, when with Wake most definitely, she's pretty dang humble. And I mean really humble. Anyways, as the romance subplot advances, clubs ask her to be part of their clubs, because she's talent. Unfortunately, she does not take interest in them and prefers photography, evidenced by her carrying a camera around and, per Wake's suggestion, Fine opens a photography club. She then occasionally takes pictures of the things she loves in life, sending them back to her hometown. She really holds the group of friends at her home really highly, and is willing to go back at any time if something does happen. Next order of business is her battle prowess. Also, I would just like to point out she is so elegant that she wears a freaking dress to battle. I mean, seriously, look at that attire! Then again, I guess it would make sense that her speed is one of her lowest stats. I am so sorry, and I apologize for that joke. Moving on, her weapon of choice in battle is an odd pair of a sniper-like gunblade, in tandem with a kite shield named the Lotus Grin, but then it is later upgraded to become Ares. How fitting. With these weapons, she is capable of using the Dusk element, the equivalent of darkness in this game. I said that she was an unbroken kinetic for a reason. In this game, there is an element system, but there are two elements that are outside of this system, Dusk and Light. They are both the strongest elements in the game, with the exception of the Light element being stronger than Darkness. This essentially makes Fine one of the most useful girls to take into battle, and if possible, one of the strongest due to her elemental affinity. You can literally clear through bosses by exploiting this tactic, and considering that Dusk is also strong against Dusk, she literally makes this game a cakewalk. Bottom line, Fine is an elegant, exquisite, and just an overall amazing asset to Wake's harem. And heck, if you manage to max out her social link, I mean get her lover's ending, Wake and Fine, much like with all the other endings, they will get married and have a true kid. Seriously, if you can handle many Japanese elements of fan service, then play this game. Warning, the following segment contains major spoilers for Bravely Default. If you have played it, keep watching, otherwise just stop watching right now. You know, for all the faults this game had, there were many great characteristics that made up for them. The gameplay is great, the story was surprisingly solid, and the soundtrack was composed by frickin' Revo, and the characters were all quite memorable in their own ways. However, the aspect of this game that stands out the most for me is the engaging gameplay and class system. I could honestly care less if the story was pretty bad late game, I was having a little too much fun bulldozing through it. Yes, the story is integral, but I can honestly say it is some of the best fun I had in quite a while, simply because of how the game works, and all the bosses complement the way to play the game as well. All of the classes that you obtain in this game are done by defeating the asterisk-wielding bosses, and they all take advantage of this fact and show how well each class can be played. In this game, there are 3 classes, with corresponding characters that are proficient in the dark arts. The Black Mage Ominous Crow, who is, well, your standard Black Mage, yet he really doesn't use the level 6 Dark spell that Black Mages typically get, opting for Arson. The Arcanist, Victoria, is an incredibly sadistic, psychopathic, and no doubt antagonistic monster of a girl, who is by far one of my least favorite bosses in this game, due to her offensive prowess. And there's number 1 on this list, the Dark Knight Asterisk Wielder.
Alternate!
Hell freaking yeah! Alternus Dim, the Dark Knight, and single-handedly one of this game's biggest badasses and bruisers. The game introduces this guy by literally wrecking a ship that you need for your journey way back in the beginning of the game. Later on, after the game's consistent gray and gray morality starts popping up around chapter 4, the final boss for the chapter is none other than the Dark Knight himself. And this is where things take a turn for the hectic. Alternus is well aware of the effects that the crystals will have on the entire world of Luxemdark, and his last chance to stop them is to take down our heroes. Unfortunately, that also means Adia, the love of his life. No, seriously.
Can we not go back to as before, Adia? Did we not grow up together? Did we not enjoy the closeness of family? I had thought that once I had proven myself, perhaps I would take you as my bride.
Don't be a fool! Now's not the time for such rubbish!
Rubbish.
And to hammer it in even further, the moment he says this, his AI script will have him attack Adia. It's all very heart-wrenching to watch or even do this boss fight because of how things escalate out of control due to the direness of the situation and how the story takes things later on. Alternus is very determined to carry out his goals, just showing his dedication to Lord Marshall, and he is no slouch in the combat department. His Bane skills are the composite of his Umbrakinetics, and his physical strength output is through the roof with the almighty Minus Strike. Hell, the Dark Knight class itself is one of my favorite classes in the game, and in the original Bravely Default, it was the most broken class in-game, and I wouldn't put it past them either. The only major problem I could see with Alternus and the Dark Knight class in general is that it requires an insane amount of risk, seeing that the effectiveness of this class can easily drain your HP, but if the cards are played correctly, it can easily decimate a lot of this game's bosses. Going back to the game's story, after Alternus is defeated, it reveals the face under the helm, which turns out to be... Ring a bell? Although I had a feeling it was Ring a Bell under that helm, I never had thought it would be him from another dimension. Then again, his name, Alternus Dim, does mean something now. Anyways, with Ring a Bell's identity revealed, it adds a new layer of depth to his character, where it shows in the other worlds that the four visit. For one, Alternus has been abandoned by his mother as a child, where he then learned the powers of darkness when he began hating the entire world. But soon, Adia's father, the Templar and Lord Marshall, gave his life meaning, and as stated earlier, loved Adia. Although to say that joy would soon be snatched away from him more than once says quite about the emotional scars that would arise. Hell, in another world that the four visit, Adia has died and the sanity slippage is honestly quite horrifying.
I made a vow, and yet...
Alternus! What's happened to you?
I swore, vowed to protect. Why, then...
Are you alright?
Am I alright? Yes. At least now I am. None of it matters now. Whatever happens, let my body be rent in two and the world come to an end. I care not. But why? Tell me! Tell me! Why? Why did you have to die? Answer me! Adia, So, in this world, Idea is...
Alternus.
Whatever may happen, I care. You're me. You're me from back when I had nothing. I dared to ask for something and lost all I'd found. And now you've come to end me. Very well. Nothing remains for me. I'll die by your hand. Or any other.
No! Alternus, listen!
It's no use. He's blind with grief.
He gets better though. In other worlds, you gotta face him where his sanity has not slipped, and he participates in some of the best fights in the game. For example, in Chapter 7, instead of fighting just Brave, you also get to fight Alternus alongside him. And not only that, in that same battle, Kami Azumi, Adia's master, just struts in like nothing's happened and decides to join the fray, and it is all so satisfying to fight considering the bad blood that was seen prior to this battle. So seeing this was a breath of fresh air. And heck, in the true ending, the original Ring a Bell does something that will warm your hearts, but I'll leave it to you to find out what that is. Seriously, what can I say about this guy? The class he gives out is worth it. It deals tons of damage. His offensive stats are incredible. The dark art skills he has are more than worth your time, and he, along with the entire Dark Knight class, are single-handedly one of the best Umbrakinetics in video games. I'm the Dark Tactician, and the Dark Knight shall return in Bravely Second.
Spooky, scary skeletons and